she said it casually, almost gently, like she wasn't about to break something inside me. Ethan, you're a good guy, Sarah sighed, folding her arms as she looked around my small apartment. But you're just too ordinary. Those words echoed louder than the traffic outside my window. I stood there, frozen, watching the woman I loved for 3 years look at me like I was already part of her past. My place was clean but small. No luxury, no view of success. Just an honest life I was still building. She wanted more. More money, more power, more status. I don't want to struggle anymore, she continued. I need someone who can give me a real life. Mansions, travel, security. She didn't say it, but we both knew what she meant. Someone richer, someone better, someone not me. I tried to speak, but my voice failed. I wanted to tell her I was working on something big, that I had plans, dreams, a future. I hadn't shared yet because I wanted to surprise her, but dreams mean nothing when they aren't visible. She picked up her bag and walked toward the door. You'll understand someday, she said without looking back. I just don't want an ordinary man. The door closed softly. That night, I sat alone on the rooftop of my building, rain soaking through my clothes, city lights blinking like a world that kept moving without me. I replayed her words again and again. Too ordinary. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just made a decision. If being ordinary made me invisible, then I would become extraordinary. And one day, the world that ignored me would have no choice but to look. Chapter 2. The Day She Chose Him. Rejection doesn't always come with shouting or cruelty. Sometimes it arrives softly, wrapped in politeness, excuses, and a smile that hurts more than anger ever could. I still remember that afternoon clearly. The cafe smelled of burnt coffee and rain-soaked jackets. Outside, the city moved as if nothing important was happening. But for me, everything was about to collapse. She sat across from me, fingers wrapped around her cup, eyes avoiding mine. I had rehearsed my words 100 times. I wasn't rich. I wasn't powerful. I had no grand future to promise, only loyalty, effort, and a heart that belonged entirely to her. I like you, I said finally, voice steady despite the storm inside me. Not just as a friend. I want to build something real, even if it takes time. She exhaled slowly, as if she had already decided long ago. You're kind, she said. You're sincere, but you're too ordinary. The word ordinary landed heavier than an insult. She looked at me then, not cruelly but with pity. That's not what I want, she continued. I need stability, a future I don't have to struggle for. That was when he walked in, tall, confident, expensive watch glinting under the lights. The kind of man who never checks price tags. He waved at her like he owned the room, and maybe he did. She stood up immediately. This is Daniel, she said quickly. We've been seeing each other. Seeing each other? I smiled out of reflex, my chest hollow. I stood, shook his hand, congratulated them like a fool playing his part perfectly. Later that night, alone in my small apartment, the silence screamed louder than words. I replayed everything. Her smile when she talked about his car. The way she laughed at his stories. Stories that cost more money than I earned in a month. The ease with which she chose comfort over commitment. That was the night I made a promise. If being ordinary meant being invisible, then I would disappear completely. Not to beg. Not to chase, but to change. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. I worked until my hands shook. I studied when others slept. I failed more times than I could count. People laughed when I talked about ambition. Know your place, they said. And I did. I just planned to leave it behind. Because rejection didn't break me. It rewired me. And while she was building a life on borrowed comfort, I was laying foundations that would one day shake her world. She didn't know it yet. But the man she called ordinary was already gone. Chapter 3. The day I stopped explaining myself. I still remembered the look on her face when she walked away from me. Not anger. Not hatred. Just disappointment. As if I had failed a test I never knew I was taking. That memory haunted me for years. After my rebirth, life replayed like a cruel movie on fast forward. The same streets. The same faces. The same ignored boy, me. Except this time, something inside me refused to break. I stopped chasing validation. At college, I sat in the back rows listening more than talking. People mistook my silence for weakness. Teachers overlooked me. Classmates laughed when I wore the same jacket 2 winters in a row. And she, the girl who once rejected me for being too ordinary, barely remembered my name. One afternoon, I overheard her laughing with her friends. "He's nice," she said casually, "but I can't build a future with someone who has no ambition." That sentence burned deeper than the rejection itself. That night, instead of crying like before, I opened my laptop. I started learning business models, coding basics, investment psychology, anything that could turn time into power. While others partied, I studied. While they slept, I worked. Not for revenge, but because I never wanted to feel that powerless again. Months passed. Something changed. My posture, my voice, my eyes. People didn't notice immediately, but respect arrives quietly before it becomes loud. One day, a professor asked me to lead a group project, then another. Then an internship offer landed in my inbox, one I knew would change everything. When she saw me presenting confidently in front of the class, her smile froze. For the first time, she was looking at me, really looking. But I didn't look back. That was the day I understood something important. The strongest revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's no longer needing them to believe in you. Chapter 4. Reborn with nothing to lose. I woke up gasping. Same ceiling, same old room, same cracked mirror, but the date on my phone froze my blood. 10 years earlier, I was young again. Broke again, ignored again. But this time I remembered everything. Her rejection, their laughter. My future success, my death. I clenched my fists. This wasn't a miracle. This was a warning. In my first life, I wasted years trying to be liked. In this one, I would be feared, respected, and untouchable. I rewrote my choices. I didn't trust fake friends. I didn't chase love. I didn't beg for chances. Every failure became a lesson. Every insult became fuel. I invested early, learned silently, moved strategically, while my family still ignored me, while she still looked through me. I smiled because this time, I knew exactly where I was going. And when I arrived, they would remember my name. Chapter 5. The day they realized I was never ordinary. For the first time in years, my life felt quiet, not the painful silence of being ignored, but the calm that comes when you finally stop needing approval. 6 months had passed since I launched my startup. What began as a small idea in a rented apartment had turned into something bigger than I ever imagined. Investors called. Emails never stopped. My name started appearing in business articles, not flashy headlines, but enough to make people curious. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post about it. I just worked. One evening, my assistant walked into my office, holding a tablet. "Sir, your family is here." I froze. I hadn't spoken to them since the day I walked away. The day they said I was too ordinary to matter. I told myself I didn't care. But hearing those words, "Your family is here," made my chest tighten. When I stepped into the lobby, I barely recognized them. My father looked smaller. My mother avoided eye contact. My brother, the golden child, stood silently, hands clenched, for the first time in my life. They were nervous around me. "We didn't know," my mother whispered. "We didn't think you'd actually succeed." I almost laughed. That sentence explained everything. They hadn't believed in me, not because I lacked talent, but because believing in me meant admitting they were wrong. My father cleared his throat. "We heard about your company. The funding, the office downtown." I nodded, calm, controlled. No anger, no pride, just distance. Then she stepped forward, the woman who rejected me for being too ordinary. She looked different, designer clothes, perfect makeup, but her eyes betrayed her. They were desperate. "I didn't mean what I said back then," she murmured. "I just wanted security. I remembered standing in the rain that night, holding my phone, rereading her message until the words blurred. "You're a good guy." Just not enough, I met her gaze. "I became everything you wanted," I said softly. "But I stopped wanting you." Silence filled the room. No yelling, no dramatic exit. Just truth, heavy and unavoidable. As they left, my brother turned back. "You were never ordinary," he said quietly. "We just couldn't see it." I watched them disappear through the glass doors. And for the first time, I didn't feel revenge. I felt free. Chapter 6. When Power Finally Speaks. By the time the city started whispering his name, Ethan had already moved on. He no longer chased validation. He no longer waited for apologies. The boy his family ignored for years was gone, replaced by a man who owned silence, confidence, and control. At a high-profile business summit in New York, the truth finally surfaced. Ethan walked into the hall wearing a tailored suit, calm and composed. Cameras turned. Executives paused mid-conversation. His company logo lit up, the massive screen behind the stage, the fastest growing firm in the state. And then his family arrived. They didn't recognize him at first. His father stood frozen when he read the name on the screen. His mother's hands trembled when she realized the CEO everyone was applauding was her son. The siblings who once mocked him stood speechless. Ethan didn't look at them. He spoke about resilience, about being ignored, about building success in silence. Each word felt like quiet thunder. For the first time in his life, the power had shifted. They didn't clap because he was family. They clapped because he had won. And somewhere in the crowd, the woman who once rejected him watched with tears, realizing, too late that ordinary, had become untouchable. But Ethan felt nothing. No anger, no revenge, only peace. Because the strongest victory is not proving them wrong. It's no longer needing their approval. Chapter 7. The Choice That Ended Everything. The rain fell softly against the gates of the mansion. Not dramatic anymore, just quiet, steady, final. I stood inside, looking out through the tall glass windows, watching her silhouette fade into the distance. She didn't knock again. She didn't shout my name. For the first time in her life, she accepted silence as an answer. 7 years ago, she had rejected me for being ordinary. Tonight, I rejected her for the same reason, because she never learned to see value beyond appearances. Success hadn't changed me the way she expected. I didn't feel powerful because I owned a mansion or a company. I felt powerful because I was no longer chasing validation from people who couldn't love me at my lowest. I turned away from the window and walked deeper into my home. Not as an act of revenge, but as an act of peace. My family, who once ignored me, now spoke my name with pride. The world that once dismissed me now listened when I spoke. But the greatest victory wasn't wealth, status, or recognition. It was this. I no longer needed anyone who once made me feel small. That night, I poured a glass of water, not champagne, and stood alone on the balcony. The city lights shimmered below, vast and endless, just like the future ahead of me. Some people come back when you succeed. Others only teach you why you had to succeed without them. And as the rain finally stopped, I smiled, not because she cried outside my mansion, but because I never needed her tears to prove my worth. The story didn't end with her regret. It ended with my freedom.